which is additional trig topics. And our first lesson today is going to be the laws of sines and cosines. So real quick, first we want to talk about this triangle here, which is called an oblique triangle. It's a triangle with no 90-degree angles, which is kind of different because we're usually used to working with 90s with trig, right? So real quick, we have angles A, B, and C. And then you'll notice going across from them you have sides A, B, and C. Okay, so that's just something we want to keep in mind when we are working with these triangles. So the first law we're going to work with is the law of sines, which is pretty easy to remember. You have the side and the corresponding angle that you're working with a ratio, right? You're using side A compared to the sine of angle A. Likewise with B and angle B, side C and angle C, right? And it's really neat because we can work with either A and B, A and C, or B and C, depending on what they give us in the triangle. Right? And you'll see how that works in a moment. You're also going to need a calculator. I'm going to be using Desmos on my phone if you want to use that, or the school calculators, anything is fine. Right? So here's our first problem. I'm going to leave the law of sines up here for us to look at. Right? We want to solve this triangle to the nearest whole number, so when we round, we want no decimals remaining, right? Whole numbers. They give us angle A is 118 degrees, angle B is 22, and then side C, remember side goes across from angle, as 24. I'm going to real quick just finish filling out these sides right here. So I'm going to show you some pretty easy tricks to do with the calculator as we go along, but before we have to even use the law of sines, we can actually find this third angle just because we know triangle sum theorem, right? All three of these angles should add to 180 degrees. Right, so when we start combining and subtract, we end up with angle C being 40 degrees. And I'm going to add that into the picture as well. Alright, so we got a really quick one of the three things that we're looking for just by triangle sum. But now we want to start finding these missing sides, right? And we don't have any fancy tricks like that here. We also can't use the trig formulas that we would normally use because there's no 90s, right? So we're going to have to try out this law of sines thing. Now, the only complete thing that we have to work with is C, right? We have side C and we found angle C. So this is one of the ones that we have to use. But we're lucky because we were given angles for both A and B. So we can figure out either one of these first. Let's work with A. So this is what we're going to be wanting to plug in, right? We know C is 24 and angle C is 40. We know angle A is 118. We just need to find A. So right now I'm just filling in what we already know. Right? And we're going to do some quick cross multiplication. So we get a sine of 40 equals 24 sine of 118. Then we have to divide by sine of 40 on both sides. So let's go to our calculators. Right? If you're using Desmos like I am, you're going to want to make sure that you go to the little wrench and change it to degree mode because we are working in degrees. Right, so we want 24 function sine 118 degrees divided by sine of 40. And it comes out to 32.9. That 0.9 will make us round up to 33. Now don't delete that off of your calculator. All right, keep that on there for a minute because we're going to actually come back to that. Okay, so we found A to be 33. Now we're going to have to find B. I could use A and A to help me find B, but I'm not going to because I already have the stuff here for C and I already have it plugged into my formula, which also means that it's already plugged into a calculator, which is why I was saying keep that on there, because we're only going to have to change a little bit in our calculator. Right, so I'm going to use b and sine of 22. That should be equal to 24 over the sine of 40, right? Because we're still using c, right? All of our cross multiplication happens like usual. Then we have to divide by sine of 40. But what you notice, hopefully, is we have 24 sine of 22 divided by sine of 40, which is something that we already pretty much had in the calculator, right? We already have the 24. We just got to change this 118 to a 22, and that 40 was what we wanted as well. So let's just change that to a 22. And now we got our answer. We don't have to type everything in again. 13.9, just going to round up to 14. And there you go. That's the answer to our problem. So, just quick recap, because you're going to try one of these on your own in a second, right? We were given enough information to find angle C real quick, triangle sum, and then we had to use side C and angle C because it was the only full pair that we had, and we could have done either one of these first, A or B. It didn't really matter, but what we remembered is we want to use C and C again for the other one because we were able to type it into our calculator a little bit faster. Okay, so I want you to try one on your own. You'll pause the video and resume it when you are ready to check your solution. Here it is. Okay, so pause it and resume when you're ready to check. Alright. Let's see how you did with this one. Right, they give us some information right off the bat, right? Angle A is 93, angle C is 58, angle B we're not sure about, but we do know side B is 16, which means that we're trying to find A and C. Alright, we can find angle B pretty quick if we add the two angles that they give us. Right, we combine those, we end up with 151. And subtract from both sides, we come up with 29 for angle B. 29 degrees. Okay, so far so good. Now, the full pair that we have to work with here would be B and angle B. So we've got 16 over sine of 29. And let's say that we work with A first, right? We don't know the side, but we do know the angle is 93. Gonna have to cross multiply, right? So we got A times sine of 29 equals 16 sine of 93. Divide by sine of 29. And this is the thing that we're going to type into our calculators. Now, I've already got most of the format that I need, right? I can just click in and change the numbers, right? That 24 becomes a 16. That 22 needs to become a 93. And then 29 on bottom. And we come up with 32.9. So that's going to round up to 33. That side A is going to be 33. Going to keep working with B here. You don't have to technically, but again, it's a shortcut on the calculator. I'm trying to find side C. We know angle 58 degrees. Okay, cross multiply. So we got C sine of 29 Divide. So this is our new function. One thing has to change though on our calculator if we do it right. We get 27.9, which is going to round up to 28. So did you get all of those answers in that answer box? I bet you did, because it's pretty simple. Right, just using some pretty quick tricks. Now we got law of cosines. These are not quite as friendly to use, but not bad. Right? It involves a lot of stuff. Right? We got side A squared on one side, and on the other side you get the remaining two sides being used a couple of times, right? And the cosine of A. So the big thing to remember here is that the side that you're finding in this angle that corresponds, right? Those two things are separated from each other, and then we're using the remaining sides quite a lot. So if you're gonna try to remember these, they take a little bit of practice, but it makes sense after a while trying to memorize those. Okay, so we're going to find here that we can actually use both laws, sine and cosine, to solve these particular problems. So we'll do that. All right, we're going to end up using both. So this problem, solving this triangle to the nearest whole number, this time they gave us two sides, and we're trying to find side C, and they only gave us one of the angles, which means that we have two to find on our own. So we can't use that quick trick of, triangle sum theorem. So we're going to have to do some other tricks instead. All right, I'm just going to fill out the rest of those sides, and we're going to have to find side C first. Why am I saying side C first? Because this is what I'm solving for, and it's the only angle that I know for sure that I can plug in for this formula. So it makes sense to me that we'd have to find that one first. So C squared is going to be equal to A squared, which is 29, plus B squared, which is 13, minus 2 times A times B cosine of 41. Right, so all I did was just plug in all the values into this formula down here that were given to me in the original problem. All right, I need to take the square root of both sides. Now, you could start squaring all this stuff out if you wanted to and multiplying all that, but if you're using the calculators the right way and you're very careful with how you type them in, even using the school calculators, you can type this all straight into it. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, I know I need a square root. 29 squared plus 13 squared. Now I'm going to type in even the parentheses the same way that I see them in the problem. Cosine 41. And there we go. Comes out with 20.9, which will round up to 21. Right, so shortcut, we just type in this to the calculator. Yeah, you could have went out and squared all this stuff and added it up and typed it in after. I'm not going to stop you from doing that, but this is faster, so why not just use it? Right, so that was laws of cosines right away, and we didn't have much of a choice but to use that because we didn't have enough angle measures, right? But now we can actually use the law of sines because we need one full pair and then one of anything else. So we actually have kind of the opposite of what we had before. We were given the angles, trying to find the side, Now we're trying to find the angle, so it shouldn't be that big of a difference. All right, we're going to work with side C, which is 21, compared to sine of angle C. And let's find A first. We know 29. We're trying to look for sine of A. All right, a little bit of a quick cross multiplication. A little bit of division. So we get sine of A to equal 29 sine of 41 divided by 21. Now, if you remember anything about trig, we need to take the inverse of this. So we're doing sine inverse, and we're going to type this all in. So here we go. Here's our calculator. Let's clear that one out. Right, we need sine inverse now of 29 sine 41 divided by 21. And it comes out with 64.9, which will round up, which will round up to 65. So we get the measure of angle A to equal 65 degrees. Now, could we use law of sines again? Sure, we could. But again, we already have two of these angles known, so we can just use triangle sum. Angle B plus 65 plus 41 should add to 180. We add those, we get 106. We subtract 106 from both sides, and we get 74. Okay, so for this particular problem, we had to use law of cosines first, depending on which one we had, or which angle they gave to us in this case. Right? Then we were able to use law of sines, something a little bit easier, more familiar, and then finally triangle sum. So you're going to have one more of these problems to try out. Very likely that you're going to be using the same kind of process. So try this one out, pause the video, and resume when you're ready to check your solutions. Alright, let's check this out. So they give us angle B as 134 degrees. We're trying to find side B. They give us A as 13 and C as 12. So according to law of cosines, the only one that I'm going to be able to use here would be B. Right? We know the angle B, so we're going to be finding side B. So B squared will equal A squared plus C squared minus 2 times A times C times cosine of B. And all I did was just plug in the values where they belong as we went along, right? And in order to get rid of that square, we have to take the square root. So this is what we're going to type into the calculator, right? Let's see. Square root 13 squared plus 12 squared minus 2 times 13 times 12 so 134. Alright, so we come up with 23.0, so it's not going to round up, it's going to stay as 23. So 23. Not bad. Alright, now we can use law of sines because we have one complete pair with B. So we'll do 23 over sine of 134. That was both b's. And let's see, we know a as 13, so we'll find sine of a cross multiplication. 23 sine of a equals 13 sine of 134. So here we go. Oops, that's a 3. So we need to type in sine inverse of all of this. So let's check. Sine inverse of 13 sine 134 divided by 23. 23.9, which will round up to 24. So we get angle A to equal 24 degrees. And now that we know two of the angles, we can just use triangle sum. So C plus 24 plus 134 equals 180. If we add those, let's see, 8. And we subtract from both sides to get 22. So angle C is 22 degrees. All right, now technically you could have used C here instead of A, and you should have still come up with the same answers. So that's up to you how you do it. But that's it for that lesson. Law of sines and law of cosines, pretty easy to use depending on what they give you in the triangles. You have to make your decision there. Alright, so if you have any questions, leave them on the comments or bring them with you to class instead. Alright, I'll see you soon.